processing portion of applications that we might write would involve doing mathematical operations. And so in C# there are several mathematical operators built in that do the basic math, things like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. And then we also have a math class that goes into more advanced math operations, such as square root, finding the minimum and maximum, the floor and the ceiling, and things like that. And we'll look at those math class operations in another video. For now, we're going to focus on just the basic math expressions and operators. So I have here two variables, x and y, and I've assigned values of 5 and 3. And then I can create a variable called z and assign it the value of x plus y. So the plus sign is the math operator for addition, and the value of z then would be 8. In the same way, I could subtract y from x using the subtraction operator, which is the minus sign. So z equals x minus y, z would now equal 2. Multiplication in C# as well as pretty much every other programming language is the asterisk, or a shift 8 on the keyboard. So here we have z equals x times y, and z in this case would equal 15, 5 times 3. And for division we use a forward slash, so z equals x divided by y. Now here's where it gets a little confusing. When both sides of the operation, so in this case x and y, are integers, this is what's called an integer division. And the result is it's going to divide x by y evenly and drop the remainder. So 3 goes into 5 one time, and the remainder would be 2. So the value of z equals x divided by y, or 5 divided by 3, would be 1. It doesn't matter whether z is an integer or a double value or a float value. The operation on the right-hand side of the equal sign would generate an integer value. So if z was a double, z would be equal to 1.0. Now the fact that z is an integer, and if we did a non-integer division, it would round to the integer. So 3 goes into 5 one time, that's the z equals x divided by y. There's another operator called modulus. And you may have never looked at modulus before in your academic studies, but modulus operator for C# is the percent sign, or shift 5 on the keyboard. So z equals x modulus y. What this is, it's an integer division, but returns the remainder, the part that's been dropped off from an integer division. So in this particular case, z equals 2 because 3 goes into 5 one time, and the remainder is 2. Now you might be thinking, when would I ever use that? We're going to use that in a future video, but also in your first assignment, where we're on the pennies to dollars and change calculator, we're going to use modulus, or you should use modulus. You could do other things without modulus, but modulus would be the best way to solve that problem. Now looking at division again, if one of the values on either side of the division operation is a decimal value, or a double, or a float, then we'll return a double value. So in this case, I have ABC as a double variable equaling 5.0, and 5 being divided by the integer of 3. The result is 1.4. It gives me the full division operation result, not just the integer or the remainder. Now we could also force an integer, or cast an integer, to be viewed as a double value. In this case, z equals x divided by the double value of y would also give us 1.4. It's going to treat y as a double value and do the full division operation. We can combine operators in an expression. Z equals 3 plus 4 times 2. And the question here is, what's the value of z? Well, the value of z in this case is 11. And that's because of something called the order of precedence. The order of precedence says the first thing to take place in resolving a mathematical expression is to do anything inside of parentheses, working from the inside set of parentheses to the outside set. Then it will treat any multiplication, division, or modulus operation as the same order of precedence, but it does them from left to right. And then it would do any addition and subtraction and does those from left to right. So in this case, because of the order of precedence, it's going to do the multiplication here first, 4 times 2, and add 3, and the result is 11. If, however, we put parentheses around the 3 plus 4, that raises the precedence of that part of the equation to be higher, and it's going to do 3 plus 4 first, 7, and multiply that by 2, and the result is 14. There's also something called unary operators. Here I can take the value of x and assign it 3, and then I can say x plus plus, and that simply says to increment x by 1, and x now would equal 4. That unary operator can occur before or after a variable in an expression. So in this case, if I assigned 3 to x and I said y equals x plus plus, well, it's actually going to do this plus plus after it does the assignment. So it's basically going to say y equals x, then add 1 to x. So y in this case would equal 3, and x would equal 4. But if we put the plus signs in front of the variable x, assign value of 3 to x, y equals plus plus x, now it's going to do this first. It's going to increment x by 1, and then assign it to y. So in this case, y equals 4, and x equals 4. We can do the same thing with decrementing using minus minus rather than plus plus. So again, if we said y equals x minus minus, y would equal 3, but x would equal 2, because it's going to go from 3 to 2 after it's assigned the value of y. And here, x equals 3, y equals minus minus x, y is going to equal 2, and x is going to equal 2 because it does the decrement first and then assigns the value. So we have our addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and modulus operations. We can combine all 5 of those into what we call combined operations. Simply as a way of writing shorthand. So I might have something like x equals x plus 3. Well, I can combine that operation by doing the plus equals as an operator, and this simply says add 3 to x. If I have a minus equals, it's going to subtract this value from x. X minus equals 2. X times equals 4, it's going to multiply x by the value of 4, whatever this value happens to be after the equal sign. And then x divided by 2 would divide x by 2 or cut it in half. We can also use the modulus operation as well. So we could reassign the value of x to be just the remainder after some integer division. The plus sign is also a concatenation symbol, just as it is the addition symbol. So if I have a string called phrase, string variable called phrase equals south, and I can then say phrase plus equals mountain, it will concatenate the word mountain to the word south. There's a space here in front of the M, and so now the phrase equals south mountain.